You're listening to the Devil Dog Talk Show.
This show contains explicit material and is recommended for ages 18 and older for mature audiences only. But hey, it's the internet.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Devil Dog Talk Show. Today we have Greg Cope White, author, writer, just amazing man, Marine, just really interesting, the philosophy that he has and the experiences that he had in the Marine Corps. So I reached out. I'm super excited to have you on. Thank you so much for being on, Greg.
Thank you for reaching out, my brother. I'm glad to be here with you. I think we both have crayons on our breath, so it's good to talk to you.
Thank you so much for making your time, and thank you for being so patient. It has been a hellacious morning trying to get signal out to our little casita here, where we thought it would be working really well. I'm really excited to dive into the conversation and learn a lot, not just about yourself, but your process, right? The way that you came into the Marine Corps is a profound experience, and the way you maintained yourself in the Marine Corps, I find to be something that's so virtuous that when I was watching the show Boots, I felt myself tearing up multiple times. My wife was, of course, making fun of me, and that's what she typically does. But I found it a unique relationship between service, sacrifice, and reconstruction, right? The discovery of identity. So I really want to jump in. What got you into the Marine Corps besides, I would say, confusion?
You know, that's one of my favorite things to talk about, because I think we all come to military service for different reasons and in different paths. You know, I certainly wasn't raised with a military family. I was raised by a single mom, and we moved around like a military family. Went to 13 schools in 11 years, and I was kind of aimless and untethered. But I had one friend. You see that in the show. You see it in the book. And his dad was a master gunnery sergeant, and he was on a trajectory to have a military career. And so he called to tell me that he was headed to Parris Island to go to Marine Corps boot camp for the summer. And all I heard was summer camp. And I said, I'll go with you. And he said, no, you can't go. You don't know what this is. You don't know anything about the military. You never run a mile, you know. And those arguments were great, but they weren't really convincing me not to do it. So we go to the recruiter's office thinking we're doing him a favor, signing up. Hey, you got 2 college kids. And that's when we find out that it's illegal to enlist if you're gay in the military back then. So that we weren't prepared for, but I lied my way through that. And then it continued to be a comedy of errors and triumphs even to get in. I didn't weigh enough to pass the physical, but you know, the recruiters are crafty, and he had a workaround for that. And then you know, a week after making that decision, there I am standing on Parris Island with a shaved head, wearing all green clothes, which nobody told me that was going to be the only choice, holding an M16, thinking, oh my God, what have I done? And then that what have I done gradually turned into, what can I do? I can do this. And it kind of snowballed. And then look, I was probably more surprised than anybody else that I did it.
That's so amazing, right? This kind of accidental discovery that thrusts you into the situation that, you know, most people, and especially in the years that you went, you're right, it was this very difficult time to either be open, or I would even say closeted, given the environments. And I recall it during my days, right? The Navy, of course, has a stigma, and there's a lot of different things, you know, we joke around about between the Marine Corps and the Navy. But what I always loved was knowing that it didn't matter, right? The identity, that sexuality didn't matter. And I feel that you really pierced through the veil of the experience of becoming a Marine. And I felt like we could have had another 8 episodes for sure, another 20, right? A whole 10 seasons, because the way you showed the experience, the whole process, and you took the story from the book to the screenwriting, and I enjoyed every moment of it. It wasn't a missed opportunity. There was plenty of character development, and the love of camaraderie, the love of service, I felt through every moment, right? Where it was this conscious effort to say, hey, here's something that's not enjoyable, right? But here's something we could do about it. And you picked up and without fear continued to march with your ruck. I was really just impressed. Of course, man to man, we're looking at, service. What does it mean to serve? And what does it mean to have sacrificed, whether it be in identity, in politics, or in self discovery or enjoyment of life? I find this one of the most unique conversations to have, especially right now, given the state of affairs within the veteran community. There's a lot of problems in the veteran community, and I feel that after watching your show and reading a bit about your book, that there's a lot of that, I want to say core values, just like we should be saying it, right? And it completely shines the light on that. Not this thing that, of course, I got into a bit of the hogwash that everybody's talking, but I was just more or less like, hey, how is that possible if you're not looking through it with the jaded lens already? Because you brought the story about there wasn't a missed beat, and I mean it, because as soon as I wanted to ask a question, there it was, right? The delivery on it too, it brought laughs, it brought tears, and I thoroughly want to say, well, thank you for doing that, right? Of course, but also it's remarkable to have such a unique experience and then be able to compartmentalize through the actual military. How did you find yourself not just balancing your internal being, but the way that you felt, the situation, so to speak?
I think all of us that served have a story, and and definitely have memories and stories about our experience because it's completely different from what most of our friends went through. You know, the the cool thing about having a book first is that I got to really go in and tell the story that I wanted to tell. I got to be honest and honor the Marine Corps and my best friend that risked everything to have me enlist with him. And then all those terrific guys that I met. I was headed for nowhere, like I said, and here I was in this place where they said, you have a chance here just as much as anybody else. I went in feeling very other, but as soon as I got in, I realized everybody was other. So those characters that I was writing about and celebrating in the book, these people that had my back and I had theirs, regardless of my sexual orientation, I wanted to celebrate that and honor that. And the cool thing is, everybody at Sony and Netflix was ready to do the same thing. I'm a television writer first. This is my first book. So when I wrote it, I was of course planning on a television show, but you never know if that's gonna happen. I wanted something on the library shelves forever. So when I started shopping it around and developing it, we met a little resistance. People didn't know this world. And so I was able to give them the book and say, here, I've written you a roadmap to the book. Everything that you see, step by step, I know that 0.1% of people know what the inside of Marine Corps boot camp looks like. So this book details it to such an extent, and people, nobody complained about the details. It actually helped the director, the other writers, the production designers understand what this world was. But at the end of the day, it's really a show about, like you said, about brotherhood and human relationships. So all these people at Sony and Netflix and everybody signed on, and they said, you've written what's called, I love hearing it, the most authentic retelling of a boot camp experience. We want to capture that same authenticity for the screen. The last thing you want when you're making a show is for somebody to say, hey, we wouldn't do that. That's not how it is. And so we had not only me in the writer's room, but two other Marines in the writer's room to kind of verify each other's info. And then when we filmed, we had three military advisors, all Marines, supervising every single thing to make sure that we didn't cross the line. There's people that still say, oh, the Crucible wasn't around in 1990. That's just how you have to do. That stuff shouldn't be worried about. The thing that we wanted to do was show that here's a group of people that go into this shared experience all in the same playing field, and let's meet them all, find their personalities, find their quirks, see who's going to work with who and who's going to conflict. It's easy to go in and make a show or a movie about any world, but in this unique world, we had a double reason. We got to also talk about why people are there, why people decided to serve. We have, if you look at the character Sergeant Sullivan in the book, it's Sergeant Santoro. We just cast someone non-Italian. If you look at that character, he's so conflicted, because here he is. You learn why he wants to be there, and he is literally the poster boy for the Marines. And when his service is questioned, you care, and that's what I wanted to show. Everybody that served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or before it, or even now, is feeling seen. You're not gay. You felt seen. You were able to share the show with your wife and your sister-in-law and say, hey, you always wondered what it was that I was going through. This is it. So the fact that you believed in the show, and you believed it and you followed it, is the highest praise, because you were in that shit.
That's something that I really enjoyed about the book, was how much you focused on the adapting, not just the identity part, but more so in the show, where you showed the full relationship of the friendships developing, brothers falling apart, and the whole situation, what it means to fight and serve for our country. I found it peculiar, especially at the end, which I'm not going to ruin it for anybody, but the bringing into the era of warfare that I was involved in, right? When we got to the second phases, I would say, of that war, I noticed that there was a lot more performative patriotism, not real patriotism. It wasn't as if we are here to do a thing. It was seemingly that we knew we were doing the wrong things, and accumulatively we see the effects, okay, within the veteran community. I would say even within politics, in the direction of art, the way we discuss things, the framing. And I felt as though, right, the way that it brought that abrupt start to this confrontation and introduced that reality, because it hit home so hard, like a motherfucker. I was like, wow. I remember that day, those days where we were drinking beers, and then all of a sudden it's going crazy, and you're like, well, okay, I guess I'm in it to win it, right? And before you know it, you're just in the middle of the desert doing something. I felt that camaraderie that you connected with all the characters, specifically when you look towards a mentor, that emulation type of approach that you created within the character Cam in Boots, and clearly you had in the book. But the development of that relationship even further with that identity, I want to say truth, right? That mutual identifier that helps people bond. I always find that to be peculiarly interesting, especially as a doc. Like, how do I communicate? Because I don't care as long as it's safe. Whatever's going down, whatever anybody's doing, right? Just do it safe. I don't want to have to run swabs for the entire week. Okay. I don't want to be punching boars. I don't want to be doing any of that. And I always felt that when I was watching the show, I felt that was a very profound recollection of that truth that I had when I was in service. How did you approach scripting something that you wrote in a book, right? And you had the flavor, you had the momentum. It was a best-selling book. It had all these accolades, and then it was developed into Boots. How did you go from, of course, a book to a movie, but how did you present the information but maintain that gripping reality?
Really, the good thing is television has a format, and it has a 5-act format. And so the streaming world introduced a new element to that, which is on demand, and you go to next episode really quickly. So we're aware that we don't want to lose you. We're aware that we're already fighting a second screen. Everybody has their phone in their hand while they're watching television, or their iPad. They're involved in other conversations. They're posting on social media, which we love. Hey, I'm watching Boots right now, and I'm thinking, put the phone down and watch the show, but I'm just as guilty. I watch things with my phone in my hand. So we're already battling second screen. So, you need to make the story compelling too. So it's our responsibility to introduce a theme in each episode, and then pursue that theme, and watch how our characters navigate that theme. So if the theme is brotherhood, for instance, we're going to go in and show a conflict that our brothers are having, the Bowman brothers. They're having the conflict at the same time. Ray and Cam, me and my best friend Dale, we're having a conflict. And so you pursue that through the 5-act structure. So the emotions that you're feeling are supported by what we're doing on paper and then on screen, culminating in a big cliffhanger. You want to know, what's going to happen to that character now that everything has happened to them in this, and then you go to next episode. So that's our goal, is to keep you on the edge of your seat. I'm so proud that it worked, and that the audiences really understood what we did, which was create and shoot a very bingeable show.
Indeed. I was hooked. I was sunk in, and I was in it.
You fell right into our trap.
Yes, you got me, bro.
So, and that's why I, people ask me why I took so long to write my book. I moved to Hollywood with that story, and it's really because I wanted to do it justice and tell it in the right way. So because I'm a comedy writer, that's why the book is so funny. I wanted to absolutely bring every reader in. Honestly, most people that read books are women, and to get a woman to read a story about a teenager going to Marine Corps boot camp is hard unless you wrap it in humor and introduce all these other characters. So, there's really, the way we like to look at it is in a book or a show, there's multiple points of entry. There's something that many people could glom onto and feel interested in. That's why we start with the boys like we really did in boot camp. A baby deer, you can't march, you can't walk, you don't know each other, you're not comfortable with each other. And then as you start giving a little bit of information about yourself and learning a little bit more about the others, then you start to really form that camaraderie. And I have to tell you, I don't know about you growing up, but I'd never experienced camaraderie before. So to be in the Marine Corps and to really feel it and to be part of it is just a feeling like no other. And we actually accomplished that. People, all the executives at Sony and Netflix really glommed onto that from the book. They understood the camaraderie that I'd established in that. So the writer's room actually had this great sense of camaraderie. We're all still very close. We're ready to go on with the show. We're all still shocked and devastated that we're not continuing, but I haven't fully accepted it yet. And then, the production was also incredibly tight, and the boys really bonded. They're still tight as hell. We put them through boot camp before we started filming and let them know what this is about. So, and we filmed in New Orleans, which is so similar in environment to South Carolina. And we were filming in the summer. So, we'd be in the middle of a shot, and the boys had got their packs on, those helmets, and everything was totally authentic, and they're just dying. Now, as soon as the director yells cut, they're going to go back to their air-conditioned trailer. But while they were in that shot and in the shit, I told them, just use this for your performance, because this is what it's like. You are out here in the humidity with all this gear on and the heat, and you have to do your job. So I think, one of the things I'd love that for people to know that they don't know just from reading the book or watching the show is the result is so strong because so many people believed in it. I went from serving in secret to having my story available to every single person in the world, which is bonkers. But on top of that, we're also, you'd be nervous about how someone filmed and interpreted your story. I'm so proud that it was done in the way that made me so happy. I have a responsibility to my story, and I'm so happy that it was delivered and accepted and embraced by so many people. And that's really due to all the people that made this.
That's amazing.
You've got actors that, when our Norman Lear, who was my mentor and my hero and my champion for my entire career, not just this project, but then when he signed on to produce this project and we were getting ready to cast, he said, this is going to be a show about discoveries. We're going to meet all these young people that aren't big stars and out there. And that's what's happened. I'm so excited for the world to see more of Miles Heiser, who plays the character based on me on the show, and Liam O, that plays the character based on Dale. their careers are just, Miles has been an actor for a long time, but this should just be a great springboard for him. And the both actors that played the Bowman brothers are off to big things. There's Dominic Goodman that plays Nash. These are all people that I'm so happy to be the source of a credit for them that I hope they'll be proud to walk into any room with for the rest of their career. They all just deserve every clap on the back that anybody can manage. They're just fantastic people, and I owe them my life for making my life so beautiful.
That's so amazing. Like, honestly, you feel the vibe, you feel the camaraderie. I walked out of the garage, of course, misty-eyed, bringing back tons of nostalgic ideas.
Our plan is working.
It is. And you know what? You have a huge advocate to make sure however we get this thing re-rolling or getting something, because I do know that you're working on a second book, correct?
I am. I'm working, writing's hard, and it's such a joy to have such a grip on these stories. So what I'm doing with this next book, it's a collection of short stories. The first third is about my time in the Corps. After I got out of boot camp, I went on to officer candidate school. It's just as hilarious how I got into OCS as I did into enlisted boot camp. So I'm going to tell that story, and then I'll end that section with my very emotional decision on not to re-enlist. That was a really hard decision for me, but I'll make that make sense. And then the other third of the book is me then moving to New York to pursue a career in show business and in the creative arts. And eventually the last third is coming to LA and getting my foot in the door to write television, and then ultimately writing this book and selling this book and writing this show. So it's short stories, again, all funny, all true, all stuff that I did that I just am really hoping that people like as much as my first book. That second book, Curse, is real.
And I'm excited for it because again, hopefully everything gets rolling back on the Netflix side, because it was such an amazing presentation.
I'm really, really proud of it. And again, I just have to give so much. Look, I believed in the story so much because I knew I've been in the television business a long time, and I knew no one else in the world was going to pitch a show about a gay teenager illegally enlisting in the Marine Corps and thriving in that world. I knew that was not on anybody's mind. So that's why I knew it was a unique situation. And situation is great, but then it gets populated by all these other characters and the people that you really care about and that are taking you through this story. So again, the showrunner and the rest of the writers, the directors, the production staff, everybody that wanted to make this shine, that's really who I stand on their shoulders every day. I get to they all made me look really good. At the end of the day, who gets this? Whose little self-published book on a wild story they did becomes a Netflix show? I don't take any of that for granted. The media exposure has been incredible. The TV shows have had me on, you reaching out. This is all stuff that I certainly never sketched into my life as a little scared kid, worried that I was going to have no future.
And again, with the book and the new book coming out, right? You're working on it, the relationships that you developed with these crew members and the full production staff. And I'm always looking forward to, learning more about that, because I'm really diving into entertainment as a whole, post my injuries and disabilities and whatever may have you. But what I found in the way you present this story, each episode, each theme, and the way you track and you really deliver right on cue, I found it to be the most, again, just masterfully written anything I've watched in a very long time. It really just resonated with the whole concept of turning bad things into good things, right? The darkness into light, finding that true self, and then resonating with others to where you find that path. And you bring it up about the stars and the co-stars in the movie or the show. I keep saying movie, but series. What I think is just profoundly important is exactly what you said, that youth seeing the ability to carry forward whether or not things don't hash out, right? The whole adapt and overcome that resonated through the book, that resonated through the series throughout the whole show. And especially when you had this relationship, and again, I'm not going to ruin it, but the development of a relationship between two other persons, right, co-stars, the bond that you were able to share, and this happened to a few different people, so I'm not going to spoil alerts yet, right? But the biggest thing was that truth, right, that you could leverage passion and love and camaraderie to push yourself through no matter how adverse the situation is.
The Marines took every single one of us and gave us a chance. I went in thinking I didn't deserve this chance, that nobody wanted to take this chance. They don't care. That's not their job. Their job is to teach you in those 13 weeks to, without hesitation, to murder on command. They've only got 13 weeks to do that. We've been taught our whole life, murder bad, don't kill people. And then in defense of your country, you sign this contract. That's what you're here for. We're going to show you that that's it. Because when you graduate, you have to be ready to go off and, continue, go on your MOS training and be ready to do that, be ready to go and get in that shit. So, I realize that every single person has a story. Everybody that served in the military has a story. And there's a terrific opportunity that I want to share with everybody, which is there's the Writers Guild, which is the union that I belong to, the Screenwriters Union, has a program, a year-long mentorship program for military veterans wanting to transition into screenwriting. You work with 4 working mentors. There's 60 mentors, there's 10 groups, I think. So a lot of mentors, all working Hollywood writers. And for a year, you come in, you pitch a show or a movie, and we hone that so that by the end of the year, you have a fully completed script ready to pitch on a pitch night to industry executives. You're probably not going to get a job that first day after that thing. But I have to tell you, there's not another year-long mentorship program in Hollywood. If anything, a lot of people are ending their mentorship programs. So I just want everybody to realize that your stories have value, not just my story. Every story has value. So if you are interested in learning the craft of screenwriting and you're a military veteran, the application window just closed for this year, I think a couple of weeks ago, but it goes every year. And it's a fantastic opportunity. When people enlist in the military, their worldview is instantly expanded. They instantly are exposed to more, have more, certainly more characters that they're going to run into and certainly going to do crazier things than someone else is going to do. So writers need story. So a lot of times military veterans think that they're not welcome in Hollywood because they just know that. That's not true. You know that, and you know everything else. You're a father and a husband and a brother and a worker, and you're a Marine. So, when it comes time to wanting somebody in a room, I always say hire a veteran because I get all of those dad stories that you've got, all the stories about being a husband, all the stories about your day job, as well as all the military expertise. So to me, it's like the guy with something extra. I want around that writer's room, I need somebody. Doesn't have to be a military show. I want somebody with experience and stories and grit, and somebody that's seen, somebody who showered with 80 guys from all over the world, seeing every different type of body. That story. You can go to Harvard, fabulous. Go to Harvard, get that education, write on the Lampoon. You can come to Hollywood and write too. But if I have that writer come in and a veteran, and both of them are strong writers, I'm hiring that veteran because they got more story.
Honestly, when you think about programs like that, and you're right, a lot of things are adjusting, a lot of veteran programs are stopping, and a lot of things that could be pivoting into momentum seemingly are being abruptly shut down, much like the show. And it has a lot to do with politics and agenda. And that was something that was bothering me this morning. So I'm glad that you brought up the veterans programs, because it's important for people to take the opportunity, not just to tell themselves yes, but without fear, seeking something much like a writer, where you're saying, again, not just a Marine, but a successful artist, an author, a writer, saying, "Hey, I want that guy with depth, with experience, that girl with that work relationship, or however it works out in the military, or how everything is developed. I want that person that finds the gold nuggets within the mud every single time, because that's what is happening in the veteran community every day. We hear about it with the new policies, the new agendas, the cutbacks.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem, is when you start cutting things that you don't use yourself, right? We'll say it in the author's room or in a writing room. You don't know the experience, so you're just like, "Oh, that's the fat. You don't need that. We need the meat and potatoes." Oh no, that's but you're missing the nuances and the important factors that collaborate into understanding. And that's where I see the veteran community culminating or coming together with gentlemen like yourself. Hitting it right on the points of camaraderie, dedication, sacrifice, service, um, championing through, where no matter what the outcomes are, we have to be able to push, push, and push until we understand that that's part of the fight of life. I think that's where, when I saw again the young man that you were, of course, in the show boots, right, go from this young kid, so young, right? Just tiny, barely not weighing much. Okay. That's this one of the funnier factors. And you look at it as a perspective going, you make it through the crucible, you become the Marine. And to say that you had this magnificent career, 6 years, 7 years, whatever it was, and then moved into film and entertainment, to being able to show, like you said, and I said it very well too, about showing that experience of that boot camp relationship, meeting new people from places you never would have imagined exist, let alone you'd actually be able to talk about, right? The Dominicans, the Puerto Ricans, the Cubans, the blacks, the whites, the Chinese, the Japanese, the different needs.
Did you get the speech the first night from your senior? Did you get the look around? There's no more black, brown, yellow.
Everything's navy blue. Yeah.
Everything's green.
Yeah.
Everything's green.
Yeah.
Dark green, light green, in the fuck between green. That speech. That's where I got the title of the book. I was like, well, maybe a pink one slipped in. But, I was, thanks to the Marine Corps. Look, we all have a different way of putting our service into perspective for our civilian life in the future. Some people are so scarred and were treated badly by the VA after an injury, all those things, that they're bitter and upset and not in touch. And that I'm horrified for those stories, and I hate that. I want people to feel that pride and service. So what I wanted to do in both the book and the show is show that we are an all volunteer military. We ask people, young people from all walks of life, without question, to be willing to exchange their life to protect our Constitution. Anybody willing to do that and wanting to do that needs to be celebrated and honored, not shunned, not forgotten when they're a veteran, not rejected because they're trans trying to serve their country. None of that. Everybody wanting to do that deserves to be honored and embraced. And you brought up an interesting thing, like politicians talk about it. I'm not interested in what a politician has to say about military service, especially when they can't do a pull-up. I'm interested in politicians that understand that we are all out for the same thing, to protect that Constitution. We don't need a lot of look. If it were up to me, anybody making decisions for the military would have military service. It's not possible, but that's what I wish. Again, I have so much respect for the people that are willing to serve as our representatives in our government, as I do in our military. It's a sacrifice, no matter how you look at it.
And that's a powerful point, because serving the country as a whole and having that sense of belonging, right? The sense of sacrifice is one thing, but the sense of belonging, no matter who you are, how you identify, when it's exclusive to specific things, there will always derive an emotion. When we only talk about certain warriors, quote unquote, or certain experiences, like the combat veteran guys. I respect it. I'm in the group. Don't yell at me, all right, everybody. Hey, calm down. But I don't see the hyper romanticism, right? The romanticized homoerotic relationship we have with combat and war, but yet you got guys like, come on, look at the current Department of War. He like is the nail in the coffin of, come on, guys, we got to put this thing to rest. This whole appeal of what machismo or masculinity is, it's not exclusivity, right? The dominant side of being caring.
We're all humans. We're all going through the same experience. We happen to have been born in this country. So if you want to serve in a military, we're signing up to protect this country, the United States of America. I love it. It's my favorite country in the world. But, that same passion and allegiance is held and practiced by young people in Great Britain, young people in Ukraine, young people in France, young people in India. So everybody after the common good of protecting their flag. So, I don't want bureaucracy to get in the way of service. I want it to support service. Wouldn't it be great if politicians supported veterans as much as veterans supported our flag?
Absolutely. It would be the whole shift of the experience of, I would say, everything we're seeing, right? The dynamic of budget costs and cuts and everything. And if we were to be able to, again, come to an agreement of philosophy at one point, the current things that are happening, it's just so outrageous to think that anybody can affiliate with a party defending a certain side or the other when this is the conversation we're having, is the continuation of 6,400 a year committing suicide, the disgusting mismanagement of benefits, and the criminalized corruption within the VA, where you're wasting in the span of 30 years, it was close to $390 billion, right? But the finger is pointed at the individual veteran. And I think that was the peculiar relationship that I really picked a bone with when I found out why the show was canceled, because of opinions of politicians, right? Sure, these guys, they've served, some of them not. But when you see it through the lens of actually what you watched and what you read and what's available to know about yourself, the passion that you clearly have about the Constitution, freedom, right? The freedom of speech, the freedom to create, the freedom to course correct, the freedom to charge your government when they are the worst things alive, when the corruption is as bad as it is. We can't turn face. This is the definition of what that meant, those oaths that we took as servicemen and women, to say, hey, when the tree gets this rotten, you got to start, hacking away somewhere. And it seems as though that the beliefs on certain perspectives, and I really like to aim apolitically, because it's always towards the individual of what does the veteran need? What does the human being need? How can I provide care? Right? Being the doc, all I ever cared about was saving lives. Between it was a Marine, an Army dude, a Navy dude, or even a known terrorist. This happened plenty of times during our deployment. And you didn't cut corners. You didn't minimize the experience. You didn't minimize the task. You didn't betray your oath. And this is where I find it humbling to be in this side of the camera, right? Hoping for a signal and saying, hey, if we can come to terms and discuss stories like yours, where young men and women that identify in which way it is, and I understand it's confusing at times, that's life. But when you have an additional agenda and this pressure point or this pressure cooker of this policy making and agenda pushing and this corruption that's so self-serving, I find it to be the most toxic aspects of the United States. And as individual persons, I go, how do we then confront it? How do we then say, look, here's the situation in the veteran community. The finger's being pointed at us, and the amount of fraud we're committing is 0.6% of 99.4% of, I want to say, $400 billion in the past 30 years. The government wastes trillions every year. So why are we nitpicking on a few billion? Once again, why are we focusing on the lower level persons? Because we want to fight horizontally. That's what leadership wants, right? They want, which I loved about the character, the recon guy, right? because he looks at it and through this perspective, and he's stirring the ever-loving shit out of the boot, right? The people, right? The person that's in you, that boot that needs to be broken in, right? And I found the philosophy just refreshing because you do have to poke and prod. You do have to ask those hard questions. But much like what I realized, and this was exactly going back to your identification of the pink Marine, you still identify as a Marine.
I'm proud of that title. Look, I fought like hell to earn it, just like you did, just like anybody else did. I'm not more Marine than anybody else. I'm not less Marine than anybody else. I went in there thinking that I didn't deserve to walk in that world. And the Marines are the ones that said, no, you do deserve to walk in that world. You're here for a reason. You're doing a job. So the attaboys that I got were from probably the same people that would have hated me out in the civilian life, but because we were all in there doing the same thing. Do I have your back? Do you have my back? That's all I care about. I wasn't there to fall in love or find a mate. I was there to, again, first off, I was there to tell people that I could do it, even though they said I couldn't do it. You mentioned that, the Pentagon made a negative comment, a public comment about our show. I don't think that's why we were canceled. I don't think that somebody that can't do a pull-up has enough power to cancel our show. But, there's many factors that go into things not being renewed. It boils down to, is the juice worth the squeeze? But, the good thing is that we were so universally loved. I'm so proud of the fact that we have a 90% Rotten Tomatoes, that you love the show enough to share it with your family. The response that I'm getting from personally, people reaching out to me, is I feel seen. I had an email from a guy who had to go online, find my website that my boyfriend designed. I'm so proud of that website for him. Find how to contact me, write an email. And all it said is, I'm a straight guy. I love you and your show. That's all he said. He didn't say I'm a veteran. He didn't say I'm a Marine. He just felt seen in some way. So having all these great characters, whether you meet them in the book or you see them, now in flesh and bones on the screen, we wanted people to find someone that they identify with, because that's not just our military. That's not a look at that. It's a look at America. Who gets to be a Marine is like saying who gets to be an American. So it's there's something really for everybody to look into. And I'm crushed more than anybody that are that I'm not back in the writer's room, that we're not getting ready to film, that these boys aren't going to keep telling these stories, because I fell in love with them just as much as everybody else did. I'm ready to take Slovacek to the next place now that he's confident he's not going back to prison. I'm ready to see what happens to Nash now that his parents know what he's up to. And he became honor man. That gave him a leg to stand on. I can't wait for, I was so excited to have Cameron explore relationships and love. I had fabulous relationships in the Marine Corps because I would have been having those relationships if I was out of the Marine Corps. I just was in a different house.
And that's something that's very important too, is to not just correlate and I have to use the word sexuality. You have to have a depiction of a relationship. What does that mean? How do you share yourself in a way where it's building a bond, a love between one person to another? And it's I always told everybody, it's none of my business what you do as soon as you're off. Hey dude, hey, just keep it clean, keep your ass out of jail, okay? And please, for the love of God, don't get hurt. I don't want to work this weekend, okay? I'm usually somewhere having some beers doing my relaxing things, right? And that's the thing that I felt so alive throughout the story, is this truth to that. It wasn't a priority, which everybody seems to, I want to say, make it a priority because it's different. And I served with many people that were closeted, so to speak, but I never saw it different than anything else, than even religion, where it's like, hey, dude, I'm Catholic, he's Christian, they're Jewish, they're atheists.
That's what we aim to do. In the book, I wasn't trying to not be gay by going in the Marine Corps. I wasn't trying to get them to straighten me up or change that. I was, and that's how it is with Cameron in the show. That's not the problem. We're both good with it. We're in there. We're not asking people to accept us. We're just trying to find our way in the world. So, that's what it was. I think it's a different show if you go in trying to find acceptance for that or to get over that. That's a different show. That's not our show or my story. I'm good. I don't need to change. I need to be seen. So, one of the things that Norman Lear loves so much about the story, he also he knew Dale as well as me. He loved him as much as I do. He loved the idea of taking two completely different people and putting them on the same playing field. They didn't have to be gay and straight. They could have been two other extremes. But the point is, we're on the same playing field, doing the same thing, meeting the same challenge. What's that look like to navigate? And I'll say it again. It's my primary goal in this show was to honor my best friend for taking the chance. We're still best friends, by the way. He lives here in LA. We see each other every day. And
So awesome.
And the Marine Corps that took a chance on me. Again, the Marines didn't say you can't do this. They said you can do this.
And I think that's the most important factor of not just what the show brought out, but your path, what you do, not just for the community, the LGBTQ, but the entire community, the Marine Corps community, the American community, the United States of America community, guys, right? Believe it or not, we're a melting pot, and we are either got to start learning how to amalgamize a bit better because we're just not, things aren't getting where it should be. And it's usually, again, to where the places that I go philosophically is this perceived difference when in actuality you have the same love and you're showing it and you're expressing it and you're committed to this love and it's to your nation, right? I never imagined, right? You could say 2006 when I was in the middle of the desert looking up at the sky and just a gorgeous moon night saying, hey, you know what? Today, I feel so much alive. I don't know why. I did, the whole day was something different, right? People were dying, people were injured, all the bad stuff. But to see something real, that's what I found in the movie or in the show. I keep saying movie, the series. You know what? You should make a movie. That's what we should do here.
Dad's next. Broadway play in a movie.
That would be great. And that sensation of understanding that you belong somewhere, that's where I found it, was when we were working on people and things were confusing, things were scary. We didn't know what the results were going to be, and we had to rely on one another. So for yourself right now, what is the future looking like moving forward, of course, with the book?
I want to continue having these conversations. I'm so grateful that the show has opened up the door to have these conversations about about not just pride and service, but brotherhood and what it's like to navigate toxic masculinity. I think for me, I really want to just focus on this next book. I've got another show I'm shopping around. I feel like I'm cheating on Boots by developing other shows. It's hard to say it's totally over. I can't accept it. So I'm working on the second book and then just continuing to pitch my other projects. But I have a hope that if anything, people understand our world a little better. And now maybe if another script comes across an executive's desk that is military related, it doesn't have to be Marines, it could be Army, Navy, whatever, that they have a better understanding of that world and they see the potential in the commercialization of that project to appeal to a broader audience. I hope that the actors are all, using Boots as their calling card. I hope their agents are calling people saying, hey, my client was just in Boots, he could do your show. I love the idea that the story can continue. The relationships that I built when I was serving are so similar to the relationships that I've built on this project. The dedication, the camaraderie, like we keep talking about, all of that is not just real, but it's what gets me through the day. So I'm going to continue seeking projects that allow me to share my experience and glom onto others and suck their experience out at the same time.
That's so amazing. I'm so excited for it, and I really do look forward to everything that you have going, because when I sit back and think about the show and what it provided for me, the whole version of what you were saying, the man that felt seen, he had to go working for it, right, to send an email, and the ability to communicate that experience where we you're talking about commercialization, of course, and we have to start looking at our community as a product. We have to become the best form of that product and work on it, nurture it, not just pimp it out, so to speak, because I do see that happening in a lot of facets, whether it be a coffee company, a t-shirt company, or other aspects of nonprofit organizations that seem to be only filling one purpose, which is collecting money, right? Seems to be the only thing they do. When you have a story that actually correlates to the truth of what service, sacrifice, commitment, honor, valor, and all of the core values that I learned, in NJROTC at first, and then in the Navy when I joined, and then serving with my Marines, it really highlighted the love that I had for my Marines, which was, if I could become the thing that helps them survive, if I can develop the modalities that provide them not only the safety that they need, but the real actual interventions. But we're talking bullet holes, tourniquets and bombs and everything else, body parts going everywhere. And I go, but the weirder part about that was that wasn't scary, because the type of love, the type of relationships, and the type of education that I received. And that's what Boots reminded me of, just this young man that's still within my heart, still seeking to create, still seeking to build and to learn and to develop relationship like this, and say, hey, anything we can do to support, moving forward and building the next gray coat white, endeavor, where it's just like, hey, it's Boots, but it's like 1,000 times better, because, these people are doing it. Here's a whole movie series, or here's a franchise, and here's a books on books on books, or like you're doing right now with the mentorship. I know you're very active with that program, and it's just exciting. I want to say thank you for doing that, because for a guy like me, that's gone through the adversities that I have, I've learned that storytelling, love, and finding that desire to communicate through the fear, right? Not diverting it. Okay, just go, hey, this is where we're at. I love the way that you brought that character out in Cam in Boots. I love the way that you write it, and the comedy that you used from your mentor, putting together these amazing credits for yourself as well, and seeing the future for these young gentlemen in the same way that I would want to see a Marine continue their life, where they're like, hey, dude, this is who I am. This is what I am. And what we're building is something worth, like you said, globbing on to, and saying, let's push it. Let's get it. Let's go. So again, I want to ask you just one last question. How do we get in contact, and how do we share more of what you got going? How do we support you better?
First off, let me just tell you, thank you for patching this up, Doc. That's such an important thing. The way I look at it is, when you saw a wounded Marine and raced to their side, you weren't patching them up so that they would be able to, not only, you were partly, so they'd be able to continue to fight. You were patching them up because you cared about them as a human being. You cared about their life and who they were, not just what they were doing, not just the job they were doing. So I think at the end of the day, what I want everybody to just continue to celebrate is the people, not just the job. It's easy to talk about the veteran community as, where did you serve? What was your MOS? Where are you combat? Where'd you go? All that. But also just get back to the fact that these are people that wanted to make that sacrifice. And so, but again, I use social media. I love people reaching out and sending a message. I don't know that I see them all, but I'm on Instagram. Facebook, not so much. Twitter, I'm just pissed off about everything, so I just retweet sensational stories at this point. But I have a website, petemarine.com, that has, I believe, as soon as you sign on to it, my very clever boyfriend has put up something that you can put your email address in, that when my next book is out or another show or something, I can send you a message about that. But the most important thing, I just want everybody in the veteran community to realize that they have value. I want people to lead with that on their resume. Not only have we seen some shit, we're valuable to any corporation, not just the entertainment business, because who understands chain of command better? Who shows up? Who, works when they're sick? All that stuff. Don't do that. But just the idea of some veterans think that their military service doesn't have value and should even be left off their resume. No, put it in bold. Hiring managers, when you see that, realize that these people have a little something extra, and that their work ethic is very, I'm generalizing, but you get it. So I just want both the veterans and the hiring managers to really pay attention and pause at those words when they see veteran military experience on the resume.
Beautiful. Again, that's something that I find super important to discuss for our veteran community. It's that sense of value, the sense of belonging, being able to build, develop, look forward to, and create, and use that creative spirit that really does allow us to adapt and overcome, right? Semper Fi, do or die. Semper Gumby, right? That whole be flexible.
We can simplify it with this. We took the oath, right, when we enlisted. We never untook it. There isn't an untaking it process. So you're in it, and you're in it.
That is the truth of the truths. All right, so last words for today. I really want to keep in touch and keep up with everything that you got going on. And let me just tell you what, throw in my hat and anything else that you got going on. Go get some coffee down in Santa Monica or wherever it's at and say, hey, man, this is amazing what you're doing. I love what you're building out. Any last words for the day?
Just everybody, remember that we have a responsibility to ourselves first. And if you've got a story in you, get it out.